and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us in studio today, Pam Kuechler of the People Acting in Community Endeavors, otherwise known as PACE, to pretty much everybody in New Bedford for years and years. That is what it's known as. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I know it's a busy time for you, but
it is.
You know, we've had other organizations in that have just changed the way things are happening right now, and the people who need help are going to you as well. So we want to give you the opportunity to let people know what you're doing right now, how you're doing it, and where people can go for help. So again, I thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You are relatively new to the position.
I am.
So before we talk about things, just your overall impression of the organization, the city, and what the mission is and how you guys are doing.
So I'm new to the position. I've been 2.5 years at the executive director's position, but I actually am a student of PACE. I actually started at PACE 25 years ago, running our family center at Hayden McFadden School, and then I ran our Child Care Works program for many years. So I was gone for 7 years, and I'm very happy to be back. It's obviously work I love, because I did, decide after being gone in another position to come back to the agency, and it's a mission I really believe in. I believe that if folks who are vulnerable and are challenged by things are given opportunities and provided with benefits to help support them as they go after their goals, I believe that they can be successful, and that's really sort of the nuts and bolts of what it is that we offer.
It's interesting being in your position. Probably no training that you've ever had can relay to what you're doing right now and how you're doing it.
That's true.
Is it difficult? Has it been, because you know the inner workings of the organization, but now everything's out the window.
Well, yeah, it's been pretty interesting in that, as you said, taking on a position like this, you are training as you're going in a lot of ways. And I've had the good fortune of having Bruce Murrell, my predecessor, still available and working with us on a contractual basis on some projects. So that was helpful, because it really helped me get up to speed on the programs that I wasn't as familiar with. And then of course COVID came, and so when I was hired, we also hired an assistant executive director, Josh Amaral, and when COVID came, we essentially went right into response mode. Right. And we're coming from an agency that is used to seeing people on a daily basis in all of our programs.
And there's a lot of programs, and we'll talk about those.
Yes.
But you're talking a lot of people.
A lot of people, day to day, going through our offices, needing help, having to bring things in, all of that, trying to make a decision in a very short period of time about how do we still do what we need to do for these folks and give these folks what they need, and not do it face to face.
Is that the biggest challenge you've faced during this whole thing?
I think that was probably the biggest challenge initially.
The face-to-face?
Is not being figuring out how to not do face-to-face. Figuring out how to completely shift our jobs so that people could work from home, people could connect with clients on the phone. And we had some guidance, obviously, from our funders and the people that oversee the different programs, the state agencies and all of that. But really learning as you go how to manage the requirements to keep people safe, because that had to be obviously the primary focus, is making sure that we were keeping our staff safe, making sure that we were keeping our clients safe, and still being able to process things.
You were talking about the different funding sources, and it must be difficult right now because, funding for really every place is down because of the pandemic. Have you been able to at least maintain or where you need to be, I guess, to help the people that you are?
Yes, we're really fortunate. So as a community action agency, we're sort of identified as the place that folks go to help when things get really tough for them. And the state recognizes that. Our funders at the state level that fund our base CSBG funding, which is a federal program. as well as our Head Start program, same thing, federal funding. And so some of those programs actually got some support from the federal government through the CARES Act to maintain people working, maintain programs running, and to also help us shift what we were doing. Because as you might imagine, we use technology in our offices every day. But when you have to do a complete reversal of direction and have people not working in the office, there's a tremendous amount of technological shifts that you have to make.
I was going to say, I know with businesses and talking to other organizations, whatever, the accessibility now that people have to have for their work computers now has to be at home. Right,
and you have to make sure that you have the right programs to protect people's information and do everything securely remote on a remote platform. So that was trying to figure out how many computers we needed to buy, and we sort of recognized in that week prior to the shutdown that we were going to have to make this shift. So we basically took the cards and went to the store and bought laptops wherever we could to try to make sure that we had enough for the staff that needed to continue to have those interactions with their staff, with their clients, and allow that to keep going. So figuring all of that out, but the benefit that we had, and I think the benefit that probably everybody's realized, is that we were learning as we go, but so is everybody.
Right.
This is something that no one's ever experienced before. There wasn't a playbook. There isn't a playbook. We're still learning as we go because things change week by week, and so I think it sparked a kind of a spirit of like, let's work together and figure this out together because none of us know how to do this. So even though I was new in the position, I was on the same level playing field as anybody else that was having to make the same kinds of decisions for their agencies. So.
And the IT department for you folks must have been going crazy to try to get that.
I have to chuckle because we don't have much of an IT department.
Okay.
We have one guy, and we have a consultant. We have a business that we work with, consultants that have done our IT work, but we don't have a whole IT department. So it was figuring out with those 3 people how we were going to make the connections and do what we needed to do, and it's worked. We've never had to close down completely. We've just gone remote. We've continued to serve clients, and we're actually still serving some clients in person. We never stopped through our food banks. So
I was going to say, the food bank I know has always been a source for a lot of people in the area.
Right.
And for people who don't know, you don't just serve New Bedford residents.
No, we serve Greater New Bedford. So it's New Bedford, Fairhaven, Dartmouth, Acushnet, Mattapoisett, Marion, and Rochester. So that's our service delivery area for our main community action work. We have some programs that serve Bristol County, so we do serve beyond the area.
And how many employees roughly do you have?
We have about 165 employees
through all
overall,
the different programs.
Through all the different programs, right?
Is that down, up, or?
It stayed about the same.
Did it?
Yes, our Head Start program obviously had to shut down.
Correct. Yeah.
And we were shut down for a period of time, but Head Start nationally made the choice to continue to allow folks to pay their staff. So we really didn't lay anybody off. People just were not working in a traditional sense. They were staying connected to their families. They were connecting to the children, making sure that at least in this situation, families were getting what they needed for food or for any other services, and really trying to just keep the connection going. Because as most of us have experienced, that isolation that came with the COVID coming was pretty significant and continues to be.
I would imagine too that when you look at some of the programs, the need went down in some and up in others, and you probably have to adjust as you're going along.
Sure. So it's interesting. For example, our Child Care Works program, which does child care vouchers and support to early childhood providers, as well as providing some community-based programming for kids and families, their work shifted. So while they, on a day-to-day basis, are issuing child care vouchers for people to be able to put their children in early childhood settings, obviously most of those settings shut down.
Right.
However, then our focus shifted to supporting the early childhood providers in figuring out and working with the state to figure out how were they going to get to a point where they could possibly reopen. What were some of the things that early childhood providers had to do to just ready their buildings to be able to have people come into the buildings. And so as a child care resource and referral agency, which is what Child Care Works is, we were then put in the position where early childhood providers were getting grants to help them pay for what they needed. And the state was offering them up money, and so we are the mechanism by which the state pays early childhood providers, and so we were utilized in that way. So it was a shift in what we had to do.
It must be tough to try to keep up with everything that's, I mean, when you look at federal, state, even local, it's hard to keep up with everything, because everything's changing funding-wise on a weekly basis, really.
Right, yes. Yes, I mean, so all of our programs have program directors, and the program directors are really charged with knowing all of the nuts and bolts and ins and outs of their programs, and I rely on them to help make sure that we're kind of on where we need to be, depending on where the funding is coming from and what the requirements are, and you know, making sure that we're also following all the additional requirements that COVID sort of put into place for everybody.
It's interesting when I've talked to the state reps during the COVID crisis or other folks, and they talk about the one-on-one relationships that aren't being developed right now, and that's really not good.
Right.
In a sense, how long can you go without seeing the people? You know, is there a fear that you're missing some people, or?
I think we do have a concern that people are not getting the help they need.
Not because you're not doing it, that they just don't know, or
right, that they don't know, that they don't have access, that maybe they are limited in their ability to access technology. I mean, there's a whole host of things that are concerning to us, and I think, you know, I think about specifically my fuel assistance program, who had a kind of a slow rollout when we opened back, when you know the applications could start to come back in. They reached out to everybody, they sent letters, they sent them early to try to get people in, and they were sort ofst to get those numbers going again, partly because we had a fairly warm fall, I think, but but also just worried that some of those folks who they would traditionally see early on just didn't have the access. So, so yes, there's that concern, and they're making phone calls and trying to do take some extra steps, but not having that one-on-one connection does really certainly get in the way of just those relationships, you know, kind of happening and everything getting done in one fell swoop, and then being able to move on. So, it's concerning for us as staff, worried about our clients. You know, I would say though that in another positive that has come out of this though is it's created an environment, and I think you've mentioned that you've talked with Reverend Lima and some of those folks, and it's probably come up with some of the others that you've spoken with, that the group of service providers in the city have worked together really well. I mean, we're all interconnected. Not that we haven't been. It's sort of an interesting dynamic in this city in that many of us have known each other and worked together for a long time. Different hats, in different positions, so relationships are already there. But the coming together and the coalescing of, you know, okay, what are the needs now? What do we need to do to meet them? How do we get to things? And the continuous communication that's happened. I mean, the daily calls that take place and the weekly calls or the monthly calls that happen with the city. That has been really remarkably a success, or I think a positive takeaway from all of this.
And I would imagine that the conversations are, you know, person so-and-so, you know, have you been in contact with them or something to that effect too? Like, because we can help them if your organization's strapped right now.
It's been really about making sure everybody understands what everybody else has to offer. And then if you find that somebody is struggling and is having trouble making the connection, you know, a phone call to somebody to say, hey, I have this person who's been trying to connect with you guys and they're having a little trouble getting through, can you help? And then just helping people navigate. So it's opened up some doors in that sense. Not that it wasn't happening before, I don't want to suggest that at all.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a lot of really dedicated providers in the city that have worked for a long time really hard to make sure that folks get what they need, but this has really kind of stepped up the game.
But the need has grown for everyone.
It has.
I mean, when you look at your food pantry,
yes.
I mean, how many people are you serving roughly now than before the pandemic.
So we were serving about, I think our numbers were around 1,500 a month previous to COVID. I did a report because we put in a grant a couple weeks ago, and I want to say that at one point we were at around 7,000.
Wow.
We're seeing about 1,000 to 1,500 people a week. We are serving people weekly, so some of those are repeats, but we are also seeing people that would never before have thought about coming to a food pantry. And we've been...
And I've heard that from Salvation Army, I've heard that from United Way,
Yes.
and that seems to be a theme, really.
It absolutely is a theme. It's one of the areas where if you're struggling and trying to figure out how to make your dollars stretch, and you have access to a chunk of an amount of food that can get you through a few days where you don't have to go to the store and buy food, it allows you to make some decisions about how you're using your money so that you can actually meet your obligations. And I think that's what we've seen. I mean, when every place shut down, people went on unemployment. Before there was additional money in unemployment, we had people, I mean, the stories, it's heartbreaking. People trying to figure out how they're going to stay where they're living. And the moratorium has helped with that to some degree, but at some point that has to end. And we're trying to figure out how to address that.
And the elderly,
yes,
a group that has really been affected by it too, because they're not even going out to get the food.
Right.
And so in some cases, you don't even know if they need help right now.
Right. That's been a worry for the entire, all of us.
Right.
In making sure that we figure out if we know of a way to connect people that aren't able to get out, and how can we get food to them. And so we all work pretty collaboratively when it comes to the supply and making sure that if there's someone that's going to do some deliveries and they don't have access to some food, but somebody else has some food, we're really trying to work together on that type of thing.
You talked about the fuel assistance, and I mean, it was a mild fall, really
Right.
was, and thus far, as we're going through the winter, it really hasn't been bad.
Right.
Has there been a demand for fuel assistance?
There has. It has picked up in the last, I would say, month or so. I think we've done a lot of promotion, trying to get people understanding that this is a benefit that they can be eligible for. I think we've seen some new clients that maybe similar to our food pantry, where they weren't aware, but with our food pantry, we actually put out information about all of our other programming, and we try to get people educated that this is another option for them if they haven't taken advantage of it. And I think we're seeing that uptick has happened. We had a call last week, and their staff is really busy, and trying to make sure that we're figuring out still how to make, we're partly in the office and partly out of the office,
right.
And splitting the group. We have an A group and a B group, and trying to make sure that everybody is getting to the stuff, because a lot of the stuff has to be mailed in or dropped off. I mean, we still
Right.
need papers to see and figure out the eligibility, but it's been busy. It has been more busy.
Is the amount from the federal government less than last year? Or?
No, it's the same.
Is it?
Yes, it's the same. So that hasn't really changed. And there was actually a slight increase that happened over, I think, in this last stimulus.
I don't know what the amount is. I forget.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember, but there was an additional that will help to affect the benefit amounts. So the benefit amounts did go down a little bit, but I think they're coming back up slightly. So.
Because there's always a concern, will it be, depending on how cold the year is, will you have enough to get through the whole
Right.
winter with that?
Well, you're right,
I'll
and it's only January.
Right.
Our coldest month is usually next month, so there's still a lot of and I think last year, didn't we have a couple storms in March? I think we kind of missed it because we were so busy dealing with COVID, but so yes, there is always that concern that we have around, is there going to be enough? But the state does a good job of managing what we have to work with, and I think they're tracking, and they're looking at it on a weekly basis to make sure that we don't have to turn anybody away.
One of the things your organization does that I don't think a lot of people know is you help folks try to get health access, which I would imagine right now in a pandemic, that's got to be going through the roof.
It has been busy, yes, it has been busy. So we do have a health access program. It gets people, helps people find insurance if they don't have
Right.
insurance. It helps people, particularly we've really been trying to educate those who are unemployed, who have had jobs and maybe never not had a job.
And that's why I'm saying, yeah.
So she has definitely seen an uptick. They've been very busy with, and I don't know what the numbers are at the moment, but I think they have seen more folks. We're actually doing a big push right now to try to make sure people know that it's open enrollment and they have access to some options. And same with the elder. Again, that's another place where the elderly population is generally needing a lot of help as well. So it's been a busy time trying to encourage folks to get in, make sure they're insured, particularly now where the risks are so high.
Has that been a difficult, not just for the health access, but when you're talking about food assistance and fuel assistance, just trying to encourage people to I don't want to say get involved, but help themselves? Has that been a hard part?
I think for people that haven't had the reason to come through our doors in the past, understanding that in many cases, a lot of what we have to offer really are benefits and things that people are entitled to go pursue, you know? And I think taking a look at it from that perspective, trying to help people understand that this is not just, you're not just being handed this is something that that you're eligible for, that you're entitled to, and really looking at it as helping them look at it as a benefit so that it can help them successfully retain their housing, their way of life. It has been
it's kind of like you're a psychologist or something like that. I mean, you're dealing with, never mind the physical stuff that you know, but you're dealing with the mental aspect, which is new, really, for a lot of people.
It really is. I mean, our housing opportunity center has just exploded too, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
People challenged with paying rents and paying mortgages, and that department has tripled in size in the last 9 months. Partly because we started working with a group that needed assistance with wraparound services for folks that were getting help. But then with all of the new money coming in to help people with rental assistance, we've just needed to increase our size so that we can help people, get them connected to affordable housing and making sure that they can live in a stable place. So.
Is the opportunity out there? I mean, are you able to help those folks find the housing that they need? And
it's part of the work that our staff do. It is challenging.
Yeah.
Affordable housing is definitely a challenge in our area, and they do a lot of legwork to try to make sure that people get into a place that they can sustain, because that's really the concern. We can help them get in and be in for a while, but we want to make sure that they can last beyond the time that we're able to give them financial assistance.
Well, that's the other thing too, is, I mean, you see things now. I mean, you see pictures in the paper and stuff where no job, no rent,
right?
Which is unbelievable, especially at this point in time. But
right.
It's something that people are dealing with.
It's still happening. Yes, it's still happening, and it's a concern, and I think it's going to continue to be a concern, and it's probably something we're going to be dealing with beyond a time when we actually have things that are living in a more normal circumstance,
right,
where we can be face to face with people more and in a safer way. The recovery from this is going to be a challenge. Our food demand is not going to change all that much until people are actually back on their feet. And that's, I can't imagine what that means, because we don't know when this is going to end first, you know, but, you know, we're anticipating having a really high demand for a significant amount of time beyond when we're able to then be back to more normal life circumstances.
And people are like talking next summer of 2022 for hopefully things getting back to normal.
I know. And it keeps getting pushed out.
Yeah. Two things I want to ask you before you go. First, one of the things that I think gets a lot of attention and people really like, one of the programs you have is PACE Youthbuild.
Yes,
I mean, we've covered events for you guys. It's one of the more, I guess, highlighted, I don't want to say highlighted, but people know about it. And it does such great work, and so many kids participate. How is that doing right now during COVID? And I guess how you look at it down the road here.
So I would say, first of all, that right now we are recruiting for a new class. We've got some new students that have started already. We're getting ready to run a second class, so anybody interested should get in touch with us. But that has been one of the best things I think that has come out of COVID for PACE. So our Youthbuild program, obviously our food pantry has always been run. We have a couple staff, but then we also always had volunteers.
Correct.
As soon as COVID hit, we had to stop the volunteers
Yep.
For their own safety and for the safety of the staff. And so we had a class that was that had just graduated or was graduating and needed an internship experience prior to that graduation that comprised about 12 students. At the same time, we were increasing the supply in because the demand was increasing, and working with our partners at the Greater Boston Food Bank to make sure that we had enough food in this part of the state to be able to accommodate the need. And so we were able to get a space where we actually had storage, and our Youthbuild students then became the people that were bagging up and preparing the food to be able to be distributed to everybody. They graduated in June, and in July we hired quite a few of them as summer help because this was going to be over in the fall.
Right.
And so they continued to work at the warehouse, and a couple of them worked at our main office to help with the demand of getting the food out the door. And they're all still working for us now. So we've moved them into a more permanent status as part-time workers, and they are still working with us. They have a post-graduation year that Youthbuild actually follows them. So that partnership is now, it's almost like a post year of helping them learn how to be really good employees and learning some skills beyond what they've already learned at Youthbuild, as well as helping them to talk about planning and what do they want to do beyond their last year.
Right.
So we've been we're looking at really solidifying that as almost a whole component of Youthbuild that ties in our other programs and allows us to support the students beyond the time that they're just students.
The program has been so successful over the years.
It has. One of the highlights of our year actually was the closing on our 310 Summer Street house in December.
Yep.
To a young family with 2 little kids right before Christmas.
We have that running on the air right now.
Yes, and it was a fantastic lift for everybody to be able to say, oh, this great thing happened for these folks, and it's nice to have some of those really positive things take place in the midst of all this.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, with everything that's happened, do you think that some of the ways that you do business now will stick with you even after COVID is done? Has it made it easier or streamlined stuff?
Yes, I think we've seen the benefits of some of the technological changes that we've had to make. I definitely think we will probably look at how how we're requiring staff to work, and some of the remote and in person, and some of that might stick around. I think we'll definitely be looking at some of we've shifted in some ways. It's sort of brought us up to speed in terms of just using technology more efficiently, and I think we will definitely.
And that's what some people have said. It's like the pandemic's awful, but the way that they've done business has actually helped them improve the way they do business.
Absolutely, I would definitely concur with that.
For people who need to get in touch with you, I mean, we talked about a number of programs actually through the thing, but if they have questions or whatever, how can they get in touch with you folks? So
they can call our office at 508-999-9920. We also have a website. It's paceinfo, paceinfo.org. They can contact us through Pace Info, and then that will take them to information about the different programs. I didn't talk about our Vita Tax program, which is getting ready to kick off again. And we should have some information about that coming out fairly shortly, and we will still be working with folks to help them get their income tax done. So that's another one, and we're still running our Clemente course, doing it virtually. So those are 2 things that I think didn't come up in the course of our conversation today that I wanted to say are still happening. And we haven't, as I said, nothing's shut down. We're still doing what we're doing. We're just doing it a little differently.
It's good seeing you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.